and welcome to UN World Oceans Day. Today I'm taking a journey around the Caribbean Sea, a virtual journey if you will, a virtual sail across digital reality to visit with friends and colleagues across the Caribbean Sea who daily's life is concerned with the life and times of the Caribbean Sea. I will be helping to tell their story and making it our story. So first let me stop by my friend and colleague Chris Corbin, who is at the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, Caribbean Regional Coordinating Office. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Claire. Thank you so much for having me, and of course, a very warm, happy Oceans Day to everyone viewing.
So tell me, as we begin this journey, UNEP Regional Caribbean Program covers the entire Caribbean Sea. What are some of the main themes of your agenda for this year, 2016?
This year, 2016, is particularly a unique one because it celebrates the recently declared Sustainable Development Goals. And if you look in particular at the theme for this World Oceans Day 2016, it's healthy oceans, healthy people. And I think more so than many other regions in the world, we in the Caribbean are so dependent on our very existence, our jobs, our livelihoods, our health, on the resources of the Caribbean Sea, that it's so timely that we have this opportunity, not just to celebrate, but also to see how can we maximize the opportunities that the Caribbean Sea provides for all of us.
Right. And by maximizing, we want to ensure that people understand maximizing in a way that actually also maximizes the right of the sea to have a life. I am sort of along the Bolivarian principle that the earth herself should have the right of a person. And so we are no longer in the days when we maximize at the expense of the health of the sea, because we know that maximizing our well-being and welfare actually requires us to maximize the well-being and welfare of the sea itself. Is that not so?
And that is so critical, Claire, because that's really, you hear the term sustainability, sustainable development. That's really what it's all about. It's about not just only protection for protection's sake, but it's about sustainable use. It's about safeguarding the resources that the Caribbean Sea has to provide, but in a sustainable way. So we don't overexploit, we don't overpollute, and we ensure that the resources that we depend on today are also available for our children, for our grandchildren to enjoy.
And this again is really a turning point, if you will, in our relationship with the sea. One of the things I have found very interesting as a folklorist and storyteller in trying to really storify the future of the sea, looking at, as you said, using the SDGs as okay, we know we want to end up with a living, thriving, sustainable sea, a living, thriving community of nations in 2030. What does that look like? How are we living with and by and through the sea in 2030? So if we were to talk about the Caribbean 2030 and the life of the sea, and as to write a story, I would like to know more about how we've always talked about the sea. And funny enough, in my research, I have not been able to find a lot of folk stories about the sea in the Caribbean. And I've been asking my colleagues, why is this so? And some stories have been because we were slave societies, we were not allowed to go near the sea too much. And the people who were by the sea were usually freed slaves or pirates. And therefore, this is why we don't really have a lot of tales the way we have Sukunya or Old Hike or Anansi that do the sea. So what we're trying to do, even with this project, is to find a way to tell the stories in a way that get more people engaged. Yes. Because you know that people see UNEP as a government thing. Isn't that not so?
Yes, unfortunately, that is so. They see UNEP as being trying to protect the environment. They see UNEP as being focusing primarily upon with governments and working with governments, or they see UNEP as somehow being anti-development. And certainly UNEP is none of those. We are really the voice for the environment. UNEP, through all its programs, like the one in the Caribbean Environment Program, is focusing on people, is focusing on how can we have development, how can we prosper, how can we not just survive, but to grow and to flourish but within the boundaries that our planet and the environment has provided for us. So we don't pollute, we don't overharvest fishing, but we look for ways in which we can use the technology, use the traditional knowledge. We have a tradition of fishing that goes back decades in this region. We have a tradition of interaction with the sea that now really represents us as a people. It's part of our social conscience, but now we have to see how can it offer us economic opportunities.
And so I like the word flourish because flourish and economic opportunities go together. So tell me about some of the work you're doing around flourishing economies. What are some of the things that UNEP is concerned with across the region?
Well, I want to just take a step back because there's certain things that we're doing now, quite frankly, we need to stop. And I think we need to remember that our mantra about prevention, about reduction, about control, those are still very, very important when we talk about the Caribbean Sea. What do I mean? You look at pollution. Pollution of the sea is still taking place.
Oh God, don't go there. Exactly.
Pollution from garbage. You see
Right.
all the plastics, you see all the styrofoam containers. Pollution from sewage, from all
Yes.
of the domestic wastewater that's not being treated,
Yes.
that's ending up in the very same seas that we bathe in and that we depend upon for fishing. And then you have the impacts of poor land use. What do I mean? All the construction that's taking place where all the soil, all the sediment is just running off into the sea. And then that not only affects our Caribbean Sea, it affects agriculture, it affects livelihoods, our food security. So we need to ensure that all of us make greater effort to prevent harm and damage to the resources.
So
But
I want to
yes,
stop. I want to stop there and before I go back onto the flourishing side,
to the flourishing,
because
yes.
because for me personally, this whole idea of telling the story of the life of the sea came to me when I was sitting on Hellshire Beach in Jamaica and feeling just angry at the styrofoam I was seeing on the beach. I would not consider myself an environmental lover. I'm not a tree hugger. I'm not, all the good things that people who consider themselves environmentalists are. I do not consider myself that. But I at least have enough sense to know that throwing your styrofoam right on the beach, you have just eaten a piece of fish. Just pick it up and put in the garbage bin. Why can't we get into our thick skulls the importance of this? So if we can't learn to throw away our garbage, then perhaps we need to ban it. So the question is, how can we get enough of a groundswell of outrage by normal people like myself who are not environmentalists, who don't belong even to an environmental organization per se, to be outraged enough about their own welfare? I don't want to continue to have to pay almost $20 for a snapper that is like the size of my hand.
Yes, yes. And that's it. We need advocates. We need people to be upset, to be angry, to want to make a change. So yes, it's about the awareness, it's about the education. But when you start to see things like this affecting you on a daily basis, you have now the linkages with the ZikV and the chickpea virus, and all of a sudden, people are realizing that the same garbage that they so indiscriminately littered and threw away is now becoming are now becoming breeding grounds for mosquitoes that are affecting our health. So we need to be passionate. We need to have everybody, private sector, our community organizations, but even at the individual level, we can make a difference. To go back to an old theme, I think, for World Environment Day 1 year, every action counts.
Every action counts. So every action counts, and the one that the most average of us can do is deal with how we treat with litter, how we reduce our use of plastic, how we perhaps go back to the old time days of carrying a little cloth bag to the market, and no
Exactly.
longer with this candle bag. So from there, let's go to sustainable livelihoods. We talked about flourishing. How is
Yes.
UNEP helping to deal with the issues of joblessness, the self-employment crisis? Governments are laying off people. What are they going to do? Are there jobs they can do with fishing, farming? Is there new technology around oyster farming or conch farming or lobster farming that your research is showing you that we can do in coastal zones, in the mangroves, shrimp farming? What is going on?
Well, First of all, I think we are at the stage now where the dialogue, where the discussion is changing. When we talked about the Millennium Development Goals, we talked about poverty eradication, health for all, education for all, and everyone went back in their individual silos or their sectors and said, we can fix poverty by just doing poverty alleviation. We can fix the environment by just doing environmental interventions and projects. The new Sustainable Development Goals, I think one of the major achievements is that it recognizes that to address education, to address health, to address poverty, to address jobs, to address the environment, all of these now need to be integrated. So by focusing on improving the environment, improving the Caribbean Sea, you can in fact increase the welfare and the economic opportunities. So you hear the buzzwords, green economy, blue economy, and they sound nice and people can get on board. But I'd like to break that down. What does that really mean? It means now that you are safeguarding the marine environment, the coral reefs, the fishing that will allow fishermen now to have a more long-term livelihood, to be able to provide them with the types of technologies that will now enable them not to overfish. By preventing pollution, you're allowing greater opportunities for tourism development along the coastline. And I'm not talking just about your big all-inclusive hotels. They are part of the package, yes, but you're also talking about local, community-based ecotourism type activities where everyone is benefiting from a healthier environment.
Well, as I'm hearing you and I hear integration, I'm saying now finally my pet thing can come on board. I'm an engineer by training, and I'm an industrial engineer, so I am trained to look at systems. I'm a systems thinker, systems modeler. How are we doing in terms of integrating now the management systems across the different technologies? There's so many. First of all, we're talking about how many? 36 countries. We're talking about 4 language groups. We're talking about maybe 9 to 10, let's say, user sectors or user groups. And within each of those user groups, you have different laboratories and standards and data. This is really, truly a big data challenge. How is UNEP working with the big data analytics challenge and modeling challenges that in a way that can penetrate through to the policymakers who tend to be politicians who are more concerned about the next election? How are you moving in that direction?
Oh, Claire, we could talk about this for hours. So let me try and package it. I mean, we are moving. I think we have to be honest with ourselves, though. Traditionally, we actually don't have a culture of using data and information for decision making. And I think that is a fundamental flaw. I see good signs, and UNEP has been working with many governments to help in, as you mentioned, harmonizing how we collect information. And it doesn't always have to be some exorbitant high technology type intervention. Right. We can use citizen science. We can use the applications that are now being developed on your mobile phones, your iPhone, your Android, and so on. So you're getting a system now where you're able to capture more of this data, but that's just the beginning. You have to take this data now and transform it into information that can inform decision making, yes, but also just make the public more aware. When I heard a few months ago that in 50 years' time there's going to be more plastics in the sea than fish, that got people's attention. People could visualize that. So now we have to see, how are we communicating with people? Drama, poetry, music. We need to now share the lessons, and that is something that UNEP is doing more with many of its projects. We have such excellent examples of community solutions. I'm not saying community approaches, solutions to issues of pollution control, to issues of sustainable fishing. But we are not showcasing, we are not replicating, and we are not upscaling of those. UNEP, through many of its projects, are now working to capture, to go on the ground, talk to communities, talk to persons who have positive experiences, and now be able to showcase those as models. People naturally are not going to gravitate if they don't see something working. So you tell persons you need to do this differently to safeguard the environment, and they say, I want to see it working somewhere else first. That is what we are trying to do more, trying to showcase those best practices, those best case studies, and now working with governments. This now is no longer pilot. This has to become a new way of doing business for us in the region.
So obviously from pilot to program to new paradigm. I know that's important because we can't keep on saying, as you rightly said, somebody else has to go first. Because
Yes.
on this planet, on this spaceship called Earth, really there are no captains. We are all co-captains into the
Yes.
journey for the future. And 2030 has been set as a global vision of who we can become, right?
Yes.
And the question is for the Caribbean Sea, who are we going to become as a community? I use the word Caribbean Sea Fan Festival with deliberate intention because the Sea Fan is a colony of living things that live in harmony and coexist. And we really have to be at that level in the Caribbean region.
And look at the Caribbean. Many people say we are not island masses. We are small dots of rock within an ocean that connects all of us. We are the most vulnerable. We are vulnerable to climate change. We are vulnerable to natural disasters. We are vulnerable to all of the economic and social shocks. In an island context, we have nowhere to run. This is our lifeblood. So we have to recognize that we need to look at our Caribbean Sea that just not only unites us, but is our source of economic, social, and even religious and cultural well-being. It's all tied to the sea.
Well, Chris, I think it's a good place to end our conversation. I'm going to run around the Caribbean Sea and I'm going to come back and close out with you. So let me say good day, have a great day, and I'll see you in 8 hours.
Thank you and happy travels.